You and your friends hurt me deeply, Despite that, I'm willing to forgive it all for the price of a meal. Just leave your wallet and go. However, I soon realized that the apology was nothing but a facade. Both Susan and Bob, with mocking smiles, admitted that this was their intention from the beginning. We sighed as we watched the two of them rant, urging us to leave our wallets behind. Bob, emphasizing his higher position than Mike, prompted a smile from me. If they were going down that route, there was no need to hold back. Fine, but are you sure about this? You're gonna regret it, I warned, but they dismissed it with laughter, saying they didn't care. Placing my wallet on the table, they mocked me, expressing gratitude, claiming they would give it to Mike later. We left the room, ignoring their taunts. I took immense pride in the fact that my design was selected. The product performed exceptionally well in sales, bringing both Mike and me immense joy upon hearing the news. Grateful for the support from my in-laws, we expressed our thanks, and they were overjoyed, as if they had achieved success themselves. Catherine, it's incredible. It's all thanks to your design, Mike's mother explained. Oh, it's nothing, really. Having this experience means a lot. Thank you, I replied. With this success, I devoted more time to web designing, gradually transitioning from a side gig to a full-fledged freelance career. Eventually, my earnings from design matched those from my former administrative position, leading me to quit that job. Additionally, I had the opportunity to collaborate with Mike's company whenever they launched new products. Our son John, now in middle school, grew into a bright and kind-hearted boy passionate about playing soccer in his school club. Life was good, but there was one thing that bothered me. One day, as I walked, I encountered Susan. Oh, Catherine, is that you? Hello. Hello, Susan. It was about Susan. Her son Jake was in the same soccer club as John. The boys got along well, ending up in the same class this year and often spending weekends together. John frequently talked about Jake, and when Jake visited our house, he proved to be a very polite boy. Despite these positive aspects, Susan's behavior bothered me. I first met her during the school's open house, where it was evident she was Jake's mother. Jake, you are definitely Mama's pride and joy. Mom, stop it. It's embarrassing. The class ended, and during the break, parents started conversing with the students. That's when Susan exclaimed loudly, Jake is by far the best. The others seemed to be just playing around during their presentation. The classroom grew momentarily silent at her words. Jake frowned slightly and retorted, Didn't I tell you to stop it? Everyone took their presentation seriously. I couldn't help but stare at her, wondering if her comment was really appropriate. As we took action immediately after, Mike clenched his fist in anger. But I held him back. Ignoring the two, we left the room, with a sense that they would be the ones regretting their actions. I am Catherine, leading a peaceful life with my husband Mike and our son John. We met in college, bonded over shared hobbies, and eventually got married. Mike, now highly respected in IH sales, struggled in his early days but overcame challenges. His decision to enter sales was influenced by his family, particularly his father, who managed a company. After graduating, Mike and I got married, and a few years later, our son John arrived. I continued my administrative job while pursuing my hobby of design. Over time, I took on freelance web design projects, growing in scale. My in-laws, supportive throughout, played a significant role. Mike's mother, a culinary school graduate, worked as a hostess, and his father was involved in the business side. Their motto, "Do your best at whatever you think of at that moment," stuck with me. Despite initial hesitations, I took on a design opportunity at Mike's suggestion. Encouraged by my father-in-law and Mike, I committed to the project, driven to excel. Researching the product and brainstorming with Mike, I eventually crafted a design. As the parents prepared to leave for another meeting, they started exiting the classroom. John approached me. Mom, you did well in your presentation. You have club activities today, right? Yeah. Do your best. I'm going to make your favorite hamburger steak for dinner. Really? Awesome. Right before leaving the classroom, John cheerfully spoke with me. Other kids remarked, "Lucky you, getting hamburger steak." I felt relieved seeing him handle the situation smoothly. The parent-teacher meeting had open seating, and we were free to choose any spot. Opting for a seat towards the corner, I settled in. That's when Susan approached and initiated a conversation. "Aren't you John's mother?" Huh. I was taken aback by the sudden inquiry, but she ignored my surprise and sat down beside me. "I wanted to meet you. I'm Susan." Even though I felt somewhat cornered, I decided to listen. However, I couldn't help but wonder how she knew I was John's mother when we hadn't met before. Sensing my confusion, she explained. "You were talking about dinner with John earlier, right? That's how I knew. And calling hamburger steak a treat seems so laid back." Her words caught me off guard. Why was she criticizing our dinner choice, especially since we had just met? "John loves hamburger steak, and I don't think it's your place to comment," I replied. Whether she liked my response or not, she clearly looked displeased. "Well, that's true. My husband works at a major company, so he doesn't quite get the ordinary tastes. What company does your husband work for?" Not in the mood to engage further, I brushed her off. Luckily, the meeting started and things settled down. But right after asking, "Want to grab some coffee or something?" I tried to decline a few times. She insisted, saying, "Come on, it's just some mom friends bonding. Besides, Jake and John are good friends." Left with little choice, I reluctantly agreed. We exchanged contact information and went for coffee before heading home. During our coffee chats, she boasted about her wealthy life and her husband. Despite our kids getting along, I wasn't thrilled but agreed to meet her several times a month. Once when I declined, she casually mentioned, "You know, my husband knows a lot of people, even John's club coach." It felt like a veiled threat, so I kept up the reluctant friendship with Susan. What shocked me further was discovering that Susan's husband worked at the same company as Mike. I remembered nearly spitting out my drink in surprise when I found out. She had mentioned it was a major company but never specified which one, and I hadn't imagined it would be the same one Mike worked for. I learned this when she visited my home one day. Jake had come over to play, and Susan came to pick him up in the evening. I had hoped to just meet her at the door, but she came in since our kids were there. "Isn't your husband working for XYZ Corporation, Catherine?" she asked. As she said this, I nearly choked on my tea. Seeing my shocked face, Susan seemed pleased, and I had a bad feeling about where this was headed. "Why?" I managed to ask. "Because I saw a business card in your room with your husband's name on it, and I recognized the company name." "Hold on. Are you saying you just went into our room?" "No, I didn't mean to. I was just looking for the bathroom and happened to open the wrong door." I was truly glad my sons weren't around to hear this. I had given Susan directions to the restroom, so I genuinely thought she was lying. But I had only given her verbal directions, so I couldn't push back too hard. Indeed, in Mike's room, there were business cards for work. I had designed them for Mike's company, resulting in several different types displayed under a desk protector. Susan must have seen those. Stunned and at a loss for words, Susan approached and said something unexpected. "I really don't like you two." Her previously friendly demeanor had vanished, and Susan's eyes were now sharp and piercing as she glared at me. "Do you enjoy taking work away from other people's husbands?" "Excuse me?" Not understanding the implication of Susan's words, I just stood there stunned. She threw out one last barb. "Well, whatever. Just remember, I'm gonna make sure you regret this." I was at a loss for words and later recounted everything to Mike. "So Bob's wife is Catherine's friend?" Mike asked. "It seems so. It must be a coincidence, but she seemed to have some sort of grudge against us." "Who's this Bob guy?" Mike took a deep breath and started explaining. "I don't think it's good to discuss such things, but Bob is in the planning department. He's quite assertive, and from what Mike explained, the product planning department shares its products with the sales team to generate revenue. Bob, considered a top player in the product planning department, not only holds a significant position, but is also well known for a particular trait. That trait seems to be his strong belief in meritocracy, or in other words, a lot depends on whether Bob is passionate about something or not. He's quite the meritocrat. Some people even say it's like heaven or hell working with him. I see, but I still don't understand why Susan hates us so much. Yeah, I'm not sure either. I don't have a deep relationship with Bob. Sorry for getting you involved in this mess. It's fine. But what about John and Jake? It's not good for the kids to be so close and their parents to be like this. Yeah, I'll try to find out more about it. Thanks. A few days after our conversation, Susan reached out. Feeling anxious, I answered her call, and she sounded much more apologetic than usual. I'm so sorry about the other day. I was just stressed about my husband's work not going well. I decided to hear her out, as she sounded different. Susan apologized, expressing a desire for us to get along since our husbands worked at the same company. She suggested going out for dinner, and despite my hesitation due to her previous behavior, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt, considering our kids' friendship. On the chosen day, we headed to the renowned seafood restaurant Susan had selected. However, after a while, there was no sign of Susan and her husband. When I called her, the receptionist informed us that the reservation was only for 2 people. Puzzled, Mike and I asked Susan about the mix-up. She laughed and told us to wait a moment. Eventually, Susan and a man emerged, and to our surprise, it was Bob. Grinning widely, Susan and Bob looked at us. Mike greeted, "Bob, good to see you." It was then that I realized the man was Bob. Susan's nonchalance bothered me, and she casually mentioned making a mistake with the reservation. Then she said something even more shocking. "Well, mistakes happen, but let's not waste the food, right?" Confused, I asked, "What are you getting at?" "Look, Mike, I'm soon gonna be the head of the planning department. You're doing well in sales, but you're still a newbie. If you don't want things to go sour, you might want to listen to what I have to say." Mike, sensing a threat, asked, "Are you threatening us?" Susan insisted, "It's not a threat, Catherine. You have hurt me deeply. I'm offering you a way to make amends. Just leave your wallet and go." At that moment, I realized that the apology was indeed a lie, and this was their intention from the beginning. We'd observed the unfolding argument between the 2 parties. "Look, just leave your wallet and get out. By the way, you do know what will happen if you tell anyone about this, right? Bob's higher up than Mike after all," Susan threatened. I couldn't help but smile at their attempt to intimidate. If they were playing it that way, there was no need to hold back anymore. "All right, but are you guys sure about this? You're gonna regret it," I warned. They thought I was bluffing, bursting into laughter and dismissing it with a casual "like we care." I took out my wallet and placed it on the table. "We'll give Mike his wallet back later. Thanks for the treat." Then, Susan and Bob said, smirking. Mike looked furious, clenching his fists, but I calmed him down. Ignoring the 2, I left the room, signaling our quick response. "They're the ones who are going to regret this." "Yeah, can't let people who pull stunts like this go unpunished," I said. After a while, a call came in on my phone. Recognizing the number, I answered with a smile. "Ah, Catherine, looks like we're almost done here," I said before handing the phone over to Mike. After a brief exchange, Mike hung up, and we decided to return to the restaurant Susan had chosen. Mike looked visibly upset. Once there, we asked the waiter to call the owner. Soon after, Mike's mother, who was also the landlady, hurried out. "Thank you for your help. I'm sorry for the trouble," Mike's mother apologized. "It's fine. People like them need to be taught a lesson," I replied. We were led to a room where a tense atmosphere awaited. Inside were Susan, Bob, and some senior officials from Mike's company, including his father-in-law. It became clear that the restaurant Susan chose was the one run by Mike's mom. It was a coincidence, but since we were going there anyway, Mike decided to call his mom. It was revealed that Susan had only booked for 2. We knew she hadn't made a reservation for 4, but played along anyway. Once we understood Susan's intentions, we immediately reported it to my mother, Mike explained, Being straightforward people, both Mike's mom and Mike reported it to his dad, leading to the current situation. A man addressed Bob. "Bob, what's going on here?" Bob, flustered and with no room for excuses, stammered, "Well, it's no excuses. Just tell us everything," the man insisted. Bob, understandably flustered, continued, "That guy is Mr. Young from the planning department's top management. Next to the CEO is someone from the sales department's upper echelon. I think my father-in-law might have called them over. Well, he was the former CEO, so it's understandable how he'd react if he found out his family was being treated this way, especially in his wife's restaurant by employees from when he was in charge. Actually, my father-in-law used to be the CEO of the company where Mike works. He's now retired and not involved in its management, but he was highly respected during his tenure. Even now, he's still in touch with company folks. After hearing the story from my mother-in-law, he immediately reached out to the company to explain the situation. When the CEO hears that one of his employees is extorting money from another employee by using their position, he's gonna come running," Mike explained. The two, who didn't know this, were surprised by the sudden appearance of the company executives at the restaurant. They seemed unable to grasp the situation. Mike wanted me to accept this invitation because my husband often works with him. Even now, I'm taken aback by the blatant lies coming out of their mouths. They show no remorse, and I wonder if they don't realize that such obvious lies will be found out. To cut off Bob's words, Mike entered the room. To the astonishment of the two, Mike politely said, "Excuse me." "You!" Bob glared at Mike as soon as he saw him. We understood the situation completely, but for Susan and Bob, it must have been confusing. Before Bob could make a move, my father-in-law spoke up. "I'm the former CEO, George. I'm retired now and have handed over the company to Mr. Young here. By the way, Mike is my son, but he didn't get his job at the company through any connection of mine. In fact, I wasn't involved in his hiring at all. And I should mention that this restaurant is run by my wife." Listening to my father-in-law's explanation, the two seemed to finally grasp the situation, and their faces turned pale in an instant. Susan let out an almost wordless sigh, and Bob was shaking uncontrollably. Oh no, Susan looked as if she couldn't believe it and seemed more flustered than I'd ever seen her. Let's cut the chit-chat and get down to discussing the matter at hand. The discussion, or rather the one-sided grilling they received, began in a heavy atmosphere, and the two were struggling to find their words. Susan's resentment towards me was apparently related to some design work at the company. From a proposal Mike brought up, it seems Susan was another candidate they had considered. Originally, when the project was discussed in the company, my design was chosen after a search among friends and family for talented designers. This boosted Mike's reputation. Moreover, despite being relatively young, Mike had mastered his own sales techniques, earning trust from his juniors and contributing to the company's performance. It irritated me that he was taking credit for accomplishments that he'd achieved with the help of his wife's talents. I personally think Mike has genuinely been working hard. But didn't you feel the same when you received advice from him? I asked Bob, leaving him at a loss for words. A senior planning department executive's sharp comment accentuated the situation. Bob also felt slighted because, after finishing their sales tasks, the sales department would give precise advice to the planning team, making him feel like his products were being overshadowed by Mike's. As Mike's answers continued to receive praise, Bob grew resentful and frequently vented to Susan. One day, Susan overheard me talking about my work with some other moms, and since she found out that I was the designer chosen for the company project, she started picking on me. We were speechless, astounded that they would conceive such a scheme out of jealousy. Moreover, we learned another shocking truth. "I'm really disappointed in you," Mr. Young said coldly to Bob, who was begging for forgiveness. "Please wait, I'm truly sorry about this," I pleaded. Mr. Young replied, "I've heard from one of our planning department guys. I hope it's not true, but there's a significant amount of money being spent on planning. Is it really all going towards actual products? Bob froze, and Susan went pale. It turned out that Bob had been embezzling funds under the guise of planning expenses. This revelation took even us by surprise, and it seemed Susan was also complicit in the scheme. Bob, angered by Susan's words, yelled, "How'd you get caught? You said it would be a secret." It was revealed that Susan and Bob were caught embezzling money, causing a scene in the store. Mr. Young handed the arguing couple over to the police, and they faced legal consequences. The mother-in-law handled the situation with a dignified attitude, and the store quickly regained control. Bob got fired from the company and was sued for damages. Susan's parents came to apologize, and the couple chose to live in isolation as a form of penance. Jake, Susan's son, stayed with his grandparents for a while. Thankfully, the incident didn't affect Jake at school due to the company's efforts to keep it confidential. I talked to John the other day, and Jake seems to be doing fine at school. He's a good kid, and everyone trusts him. Instead of being down about his parents, he seems more angry at them, I shared. I haven't seen Susan and Bob since that incident. Jake, however, still hangs out with John and occasionally visits our place. Watching the two of them play happily, I hope they never end up like us. By a stroke of luck, we were saved this time. But I truly believe that our daily actions attract the people and opportunities in our lives. I want to cherish my relationships with others more than ever.